Sister's deception and scheming uncovered after her wedding. My sister Ann is 29 years old, and she has been best friends with Ruby, who is 30, for literally my whole life. I am 25, and since I was a kid, Ruby felt like an extra big sister. She was always around, and honestly, she has always been the type to turn heads with what she wears. Ruby is the kind of person who could pull off those wild outfits you see in fashion magazines, the ones regular people would not even think about wearing in public. That has always just been who she is. When Ann got engaged, it was like a switch flipped. She started acting weird around Ruby right from the start. I was pretty surprised when Ann asked me to be her maid of honor, not because I did not want to do it, but because she and Ruby had always promised they would be each other's maid of honor when the time came. I figured, well, I am her sister, so maybe that is why, but something about it fell off. Then Ann made a group chat for the wedding party, and that was when I realized Ruby was not even a bridesmaid. That one really shocked me. Me and my mom both thought maybe they had some kind of falling out, so we asked Ann about it, but all she would say was that Ruby did not care. I knew Ruby was hurt. You could see it on her face, but she told me she did not want to make trouble, so I just left it alone. All through the wedding planning, my mom kept bringing Ruby up. Should we invite her to go dress shopping? Should we get her opinion on the flowers? And shot down every single mention of her. She would not even talk about Ruby, let alone invite her to anything. The wedding happened this past Saturday. It was a beautiful outdoor ceremony, and they kept it small and spaced out because of everything going on in the world. The thing is, Ann was in a foul mood the entire day because of what Ruby showed up wearing. The dress Ruby had on was nothing shocking by Ruby's standards. Honestly, it was pretty low-key for her. I do not think for 1 second Ruby was trying to steal attention from Ann. Ann picked a very plain wedding dress, which was totally her choice. I know because I was at the fitting with her, and that was the one she fell in love with. Since the wedding, Ann has been on a rampage, cursing Ruby out and saying they are no longer friends. She has been acting like none of this is her fault, even though she ignored Ruby for months before the wedding. I finally told Ann flat out that she has known Ruby her whole life. She knows exactly how Ruby dresses, so this should not have been a surprise. If it was such a big deal, Ann could have either talked to her about it or just made her a bridesmaid so she could have some say in what Ruby wore. Ann blew up at me. She yelled, sent Ruby some awful messages, and then gave me the silent treatment for the entire next day. Instead of talking to me, she ran straight to our dad to tell him how terrible I was, and now he is on her side. My mom told Ann she owed both me and Ruby an apology, one for screaming at me and the other for the nasty messages. So now Ann is not talking to our mom either. I have no idea what is really going on. Ruby swears up and down that there was no big fight or falling out before this. And told me to stay out of it, saying it is none of my business, and that I should be supporting my actual sister. My dad is backing her up, and on top of that, and somehow convinced the bridesmaids to side with her too. Now I am sitting here wondering if I am the one in the wrong. Just to clear the air, since some of you might be wondering, Ruby did not show up in some ridiculous, attention-grabbing outfit. It was a dark red, fitted dress made of some silky material. It was not any more revealing than what the bridesmaids were wearing. A lot of guests wore dresses like that too. Edit, I see a lot of people jumping to wild conclusions, so let me clear something up. Ruby was not dressed like she was heading to a nightclub. The dress had long sleeves and was a decent length. I would not even call it risque. For the record, the bridesmaids all wore fitted dresses too. It was not a super traditional wedding, and nobody there seemed bothered by what Ruby wore. It did not stand out that much at all. Ruby is gorgeous, she always has been, but Ann has known that for over 20 years. It has never been an issue before. Ann and Ruby were basically inseparable for 25 years. They stayed close even as adults. Then out of nowhere, Ann stopped talking to Ruby. That is why me and my mom were so worried. Ann has always been the type to overshare, so for her to go totally quiet about Ruby was strange. Just to be clear, I do not love Ruby more than I love Ann. The only reason I am so close to Ruby is because Ann made her such a big part of our lives growing up. They were a package deal, and I was always tagging along with them. Of course, I love Anne. I just think she is completely overreacting. Ruby was always going to be invited to the wedding. When my mom asked Anne to invite Ruby, she was talking about the planning stuff, not the actual day. One more thing, no, I do not think Dave, the groom, has feelings for Ruby. He and Ruby have been around each other plenty of times, and there has never been any weirdness. If there was some kind of affair, Anne would not have let Ruby anywhere near the wedding. Ruby has never once gone after Anne's boyfriends. Update 1. After reading some advice, I planned to talk to Anne this morning to remind her how much I love her and that I am here for her, but she was already furious again, so I stayed out of her way. Dave pulled me aside and asked if I could help him figure out how to make things right with Anne. Apparently, they had a huge fight because Dave defended Ruby the night of the wedding. This was the first time Dave ever asked me for relationship advice, so I could tell he was desperate. I told him I had no clue why Ruby was not a bridesmaid either, so he would probably be better off asking indirectly. Then Dave said something that left me confused. According to him, the reason Ruby was not part of the bridal party was because he wanted her as his best woman, and Anne wanted her as maid of honor. Since they could not agree, Anne decided to leave Ruby out entirely. Dave said and told Ruby all of this, and that it caused a fight between them. But the more I thought about it, the less sense that made. If Ruby had a big fight with Anne about being left out, Ruby would have told me something. On top of that, why would Dave want Ruby as his best woman when he only met her after he started dating Anne? I am trying not to meddle, but my gut says something is not adding up. I will keep my mouth shut, even though my curiosity is driving me crazy. Maybe this is all I will ever know, and it is going to haunt me forever. Thank you to everyone who gave me feedback. I appreciate the people who said I am not losing my mind, and I also appreciate those who gave me advice on how to be a better sister. Update 2. Things got even stranger today. Dave called me about 30 minutes ago, and he sounded mad. He wanted to know if any of his groomsmen had made me uncomfortable at the wedding. I asked what he was talking about, and he repeated the question. I could hear him shouting something in the background. I told him all the groomsmen had been nothing but polite, and I had not even talked to any of them since the wedding. Then Dave asked if Ruby knew she was supposed to be his best woman. I said, not as far as I knew. Just now, a bridesmaid messaged me saying not to answer if Dave calls again. And is screaming at our dad on the phone. Everything is blowing up, and I have no idea what is going on. Update 3, the day everything blew up. There has been so much shouting and crying today that my head is spinning. Honestly, I am drained, but since so many people have asked for an update, here it is. Even after hearing everything, I am still trying to wrap my head around what my sister Anne has done. It turns out she has been lying to nearly every single person involved. The only way I could even start to make sense of all of it was to sit down and write everything out in the order it happened. So here it is, the full mess, step by step. The first thing I found out was that Dave, my sister's husband, has a past that none of us knew about. Before he ever met Anne, he had served time in jail and struggled with drug addiction. During his recovery, he met Ruby, not Anne. Ruby helped him through a really tough patch in his life, and to this day, Dave considers Ruby one of the people who saved him. About 2 years after Dave got sober, he had gotten his life together, had a good job, and was doing a lot better overall. It was around then that Ruby introduced him to Anne. Anne did not want to date him at first because of his past, but she liked him a lot, and eventually, they got together. The problem was, Anne was ashamed of the kind of life Dave used to have. So instead of being honest with our family, she told us she met him on a dating app. Dave agreed to go along with the story back then because Anne asked him to. As time passed and the relationship got serious, Dave wanted Anne to be open with us. He wanted her to tell us the truth about his past and how far he had come. Anne told him she would, but instead, she wrote up a fake letter from me and my parents, saying how proud we were of him and how much we appreciated his honesty. She told Ruby something completely different, that my parents were furious when they found out about Dave's past. Ruby, thinking it was still a sensitive topic, avoided bringing it up around any of us. When Dave proposed, Anne's anxiety about all her lies came crashing down. Dave wanted to invite people from his support group to the wedding, including Ruby, as his best woman. And knew if all those people were at the wedding, the truth would come out. But instead of coming clean, she doubled down. And came up with a fake story, telling Dave she was upset that Ruby could not be her maid of honor, and since they could not both have her in their parties, it was better to leave her out entirely. She lied to Dave, saying Ruby was upset about it, just to keep him happy. In reality, she never told Ruby any of this because she knew if Ruby found out, she might talk to me or my mom, and then we would start asking questions. On top of that, and told Dave and all his friends from his recovery group to avoid any mention of his addiction in their speeches or even casual conversations. She said some family members were still sensitive about it. And if that was not enough, and also poisoned the well with the bridesmaids. She fed them lie after lie about Ruby. She said Ruby liked to cause drama at weddings, that she had a reputation for trying to sleep with groomsmen, that one of the groomsmen was her ex-boyfriend and it would be awkward, and that Ruby would probably get blackout drunk and embarrass herself. And made Ruby sound like a walking disaster, just so the bridesmaids would not trust her or want her around. She even told the bridesmaids the only reason Ruby was invited at all was because I idolized her, not because I actually wanted her there. That way, the bridesmaids would not question why I had such a low opinion of someone I was so close to. After the wedding, and used Ruby's dress as an excuse to blow up at her, knowing the bridesmaids already had a negative view of Ruby. My dad, like expected, immediately took her side because she was the bride. If me and my mom had done the same, and would have had a perfect excuse to cut Ruby out of her life for good. And tried to pull the same stunt with Dave's groomsmen, telling Dave they made inappropriate comments about the bridesmaids. Her goal was to push anyone who knew the truth about Dave's past out of the picture before they could slip up and accidentally tell us the real story. Dave is not stupid, though. When and could not give him any straight answers about what was wrong with Ruby's dress or what exactly the groomsmen said, he started to get suspicious. They had a huge fight, and Dave started calling people to find out the truth. Some of the bridesmaids stuck to Anne's story because she pressured them to, but a few of them were clearly uncomfortable with the whole thing. Dave got the sense something was not right. That was when he called me. And had already tried to paint me as someone who cared more about Ruby than my own sister, so when I told Dave I had no clue what was going on, he knew and had been lying to him too. That was the weird call I got from Dave. It all makes sense now. Eventually, Dave confronted Anne, and after trying to lie her way out of it again, she broke down and confessed everything. Dave was furious. He sent out a message to everyone in the family, telling us the truth about his past, and then told Anne to leave. She came straight to our parents' house and had to explain the entire story all over again. And is completely shaken. I never thought my sister could lie on this level. I do not hate her, even though I am angry and hurt. More than anything, I feel sorry for her because she is absolutely miserable now that all the lies have caught up with her. She is terrified Dave will never forgive her and is devastated that our mom will not even look at her right now. My mom is furious, not just because of the lies but because it hurt so many people along the way. I understand why my mom feels that way. My dad is just as shocked and upset. He reached out to Ruby and sent her a long message apologizing for everything. Ruby answered him, but she is too upset to talk right now. She said maybe they could talk the next day once everybody has had some time to cool off. As for Dave, I think he is the one who is hurting the most. He told me that fake letter and wrote from us was one of his most treasured possessions. He thought it was real, and finding out it was all fake crushed him. I told him the truth, that we would have accepted him for who he is, and that nobody blames him for anything. But I do not think it made him feel any better. Right now, Dave asked for space from the whole family, and honestly, I understand why. I do not know if he will ever be ready to talk to Anne again, or if he is even going to stay married to her. If he walks away, I would not blame him at all. So thanks to everyone who commented. I know a lot of people were way off about what was really going on, but I cannot say I blame them. Who would have guessed it was all this? But even the wrong guesses gave me a lot to think about, and I appreciate everyone who tried to help except the ones obsessing over Ruby's dress. You know who you are.